Hello, everyone. Dr. Allen here. Excuse me. Hope you're having a great week. And as you can hear, I'm probably coughing a little bit. I was out doing yard work, have a little bit of allergy, so I'm probably going to record this with the camera off, so I'm not looking too sad coughing while I record this. Um, I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. I know I say this every week. I'll try to keep this as short as possible. Last week, I was a little disappointed in myself. I said 15 to 20 minutes, and I know it went about 30 minutes. So let's go ahead and go. This week, man, semester is going fast. We are in lesson 4. This week, we're going to talk about school climate. Um, if you remember correctly, I'm sorry, I did not update this on the syllabus, but the research paper that is showing there is actually not due until the 22nd. But I am going to talk about that assignment this week, and we can kind of go from there. But this week, the main thing that'll be due will be discussion 4. Uh, but I'm going to talk about the research paper and the controversy project that is due the following week, and I want to give everyone a little bit of time to work on those. So we're going to kind of cover a few things. But first, I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into the content. And again, I'm probably going to jump around, but everything is posted. I just want to kind of hit the highlights and kind of hit it from there. So let's go ahead and do it. I'm going to get out of that. And sorry, I probably should have had this a little more open when we went there. But this week, we're going to talk about school climate. Um, and I'm going to try to keep this as broad as possible because we have people in this class that are teaching community college, kindergarten, high school. Some are still in the midst. Some are even, I believe, not even in the classroom right at the moment. So what I want to do is kind of keep it broad and kind of deal with generalities that can help a climate in any education situation or setting. We're also going to talk a little bit about professional development. That is actually what your discussion board will be about this week. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And again, assignments, I have research paper. I'm going to update that where it has the due date. It is April 22nd that it's due, and I need to actually add the controversy. I keep wanting to say controversy project, which will be due on the 13th. But again, I'm going to talk about both of those this week and hopefully give everyone a little bit of a shot to get a head start on them. With this being such a condensed semester, I want to make sure I'm not just dumping stuff on you all to get done and not having a little bit of time to do it. So, with that being said, I'm going to talk about school climate first. Um, the book actually, Plan Like a Pirate, actually talks a little bit about these things, but just in a broad sense, when we're talking about a school and climate, I'm talking about whether it's the building, the classroom, dealing with your colleagues, dealing with students, dealing with the community in general. So as you can see here, I put a list up of some different things, but to me, a climate is building positive relationships with students and parents, building those connections. If you don't take anything out of this, and this is definitely not groundbreaking stuff that I'm about to say, but I think with teaching, what will get you farther than anything in terms of communicating with students is trust and building relationships in terms of students feeling comfortable talking to you about topics that you're approachable, things like that, just to kind of help with in terms of, I guess the easiest way for me to say it is like right now we're in the middle of advising. And I view advising as very, very, very important because that's the time when I can actually talk to students and conference with them one on one. And that's where I feel like I build a lot of my relationships with students in terms of, knowing a little bit about them, where they work, where they're from. So when we do have our classes, for me, it's usually our social studies methods class where I have almost all my advisees. I already know them coming in, and I think it just fosters a better setting and a climate in that class. But again, I don't think that's groundbreaking stuff. In terms of the K through 12 world, of course, you want to make sure you have an outline for positive behavior in the classroom. I think this is one that is sometimes the most obvious, but I think the hardest for a lot of people, not just in education, but in any work setting. Make sure that you stay positive. It's not always an easy thing to do, and I'm not saying to be a fake positive, but I think if you come in with a good frame of mind, good things can happen, and things seem to go a little better for everyone. Um, content for all when you're planning. Again, in social studies, again, my default, but it's content where we're addressing, history, women's history, African American history, Hispanic history. It's not just, all about the president, so to speak. Again, welcoming and friendly environment. I think if you have, again, your classroom is a big part of that. Is it a place that you walk into and and it feels like a place of learning? Uh, Stay informed on educational research. We're going to talk about that with professional development, so I'm not going to get too far on that. Make sure you have some empathy. I think sometimes in education we have a habit of do as I say, not as I do type things. Maybe a student who is a very good student, and that one time they turn something in literally a day late, um, I have no professors that will automatically give it a zero, even though that student, it could be something beyond that student's control. I am a little bit of an empathetic teacher. I will say again, um, I don't think you should be a doormat, so to speak, and just take any assignment that whenever it's turned in. But I do think you have to have some understanding and realize that stuff happens. It happens to us all. Uh, Planning, 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 planning. Of course, the book gets into this a lot bit, but make sure that when you're doing your planning, it's well organized and detailed. That will help you a lot with all of this, keep you less stressed. Um, I put grading on here for a good feedback because I know sometimes it's hard to grade and get quick turnarounds. I'm actually going to say right now, I'm trying to make sure I have your Padlets all graded to and back before I get the Wakelets all in. Because I think it's important to let students know where they stand. It's important that they do the work, and it's important for you to get it back with some feedback as soon as possible. And again, maybe this goes back into the positive, but make sure you try to enjoy yourself. Education can be a stressful thing, but it can be also a rewarding and fun thing. So, anyway, that's kind of a highlight on school climate. I do have a PowerPoint. I will touch on a few things that I have here. There it is. I think that's it. I'm going to make this big. And as you can see, I put climate. Sorry, again, the social studies teacher in me kind of likes putting thought climate zones. Um, just a few things. When I define school climate, it's the character of the school life. I think every school, every classroom is almost like a living organism, and that's the climate. And you can feel it. I think whenever you walk into a class, you can feel that you can feel what type of class it is. When I go do observations, I can tell even by like what's on the wall, how this teacher is communicating with students. You can feel it. And I think it's good to nurture a welcoming climate and again, build on those relationships. And again, though, you also have to have goals, norms, relationships, and daily practices, routine. I think that also sets up a strong climate. Here's some more things. I kind of touched on these with the chart, so I'm not going to get into it. But all these things kind of add to a positive school climate, and I'm talking for the entire school. You're hoping for academic success, but you got to have staff satisfaction. Strong leadership is important. You want to make sure that everyone's emotional well-being is to the best that it can be. You want to make sure that bullying is on here again. That's in the K through 12 world. Hopefully, I know we have some higher ed instructors in here. I think it's even just the idea of respect is probably a better word when I'm thinking there. Respect that students have for teachers and teachers have for students, and just in general. And of course, all of this should lead to academic success. And again, these are kind of the key components that build all that up. I keep talking about relationships, relationships, relationships. I feel like relationships help with this teaching and learning. I think if you have that strong relationships, the conversation is different. It's more conversational and almost peer-like. And I think that can help that, especially with older students. And, again, an organized learning environment is so important, especially for those younger grades. And of course, safety is also an important one. Everyone has to feel safe and secure in the school and that it's a place of learning. In case you're wondering who that is, that's the guy for the safety dance, if you know from the 80s. Uh, I was looking up images for him. I was trying to find, I think they were called Men with Hats, and he didn't have a hat, but that was him. Anyway, just in case you're wondering, here's some ideas in terms of safety. I think it's even just I'm not even thinking in the most drastic sense, but also in just general dealings in the class every day. I think clear expectations to me is the one that actually almost supersedes everything, because if everyone has clear expectations as to handle how to have handle everything, um, things will flow very well. And again, I mentioned this with the listing, but I do think a positive mindset is maybe the best weapon a teacher can have, so to speak, in the classroom. Things get tough, but you got to think, you know what? It'll get done. Um, Again, I'm not telling you to be just like fake optimistic. Excuse me. I told you the allergies. Um, but I do think keeping that positive mindset will allow you to do a lot of things. And that's dealing with forming relationships. Of course, I've talked about students and communications, having it with your peers, having someone to talk to and keeping you on that positive frame of mind. A parent teacher, making sure that you talk to parents, make sure you make that time, even if it's like not just negative things, good things. Again, this is basic good practice teaching. But if a student does something or a class does something, send out that blast and tell everyone they've done a really good job, or I really enjoyed doing this with your students or your children or with the class. And don't be scared to reach out for community partnerships. A lot of times there's a lot of people, if you're in the higher ed, alumni, even if you're in the K to 12 world, alumni, a lot of times are willing to help. It doesn't just need to be people who have children or people who are paying tuition to go to a school. And again, make sure you have those expectations. You have engaged, you're staying current. We're going to talk about professional development. So, again, I'm not going to get too much into engaging instruction, but stay current and teacher professional development. Make sure also you're fair. I think this is something, um, I'm not going to go into the weeds too much here, but as a parent, sometimes I feel like I do see time, like, I would love to say everything is always equal for everyone. Sometimes I do see things that I do kind of, it does seem like there's different rules for different people. Um, I'm not trying to accuse anyone. My son doesn't go to a school anywhere too local in Berkeley or Jefferson County, so I don't mind saying that a little bit. But it's not that it's anything egregious. It's just sometimes things seem like someone does something on time and 12 people don't, then the dates get extended. I'm not saying that that's always a bad thing. It's just, it's not, there's not a lot of consistency. So, anyway, I hope I made sense there. I think just being equal and fair and not being straying from what you have as your guideline, so to speak. I mentioned a supporting environment, and there's all that. So that's again just to kind of keep it on the up and on the a nice pace here. The next thing I kind of want to do is touch on the professional development. One thing to having it mentioned as far as a good school environment, we talked about engaging teaching. You need to stay current in the field. You need to. One thing that always surprises me when I go out into schools is how many teachers, after they've been doing it for like 10 to 15 years, feel like they've mastered it. Um, this is a career that no one is ever perfect. I don't care if you've been teaching 2 days or 200 years. There's always things you can improve on. There's always technology that's changing. There's always practices that do. Each generation's a little bit different. There's a lot of different things you can do. I've put up some ideas as to why to do professional development. Of course, it helps with student learning, improves teaching practices, career advancements. Another one. Again, sometimes you can't, if you're doing with certifications, if you get a master's, you don't have to do as much as far as renewal, if any at all. It also helps with networking and collaboration. We were talking about mental health. Sometimes that's a big one with networking. You can bounce ideas off of other people. But the two that as you've seen, I've kind of put them in red. This is lifelong learning. I think all educators should always be lifelong learners. It's not necessarily that you have to go to a conference. It's not that you have to take a class, but you should, be reading on your content, listening to your content, watching things on your content. Or if it's not content related, on teaching practices, on delivery methods, just things that spark ideas. And again, I think this helps with personal and professional growth because it just allows you to expand your knowledge base and just become a stronger teacher. I'm not going to read this article, but I did put an article up from the National Education Association, and they've got why professional development matters. And as you can see, there's a lot of them are the same things that I just kind of said. But if you want to check it out, there's some up there. Now, with that all being said, let me go back here. What you need to do this week. The one thing that is absolutely 1000% due this week is the discussion board. This week, Harris talks about it, and we're reading section 4 and Plan Like a Pirate. She talks about powering up your professionalism. That's professional development, and that's what I was saying. There were some connections here with that whole idea. What I would like you to do, and don't get too bogged down with word count. I'm not going to be looking at that so much this week. I want you to kind of think about 10 things that you do, and well, let me rephrase that. 10 people, podcasts, as it says there, social media accounts, magazines, etc. You don't have to do it every week, but 10 things that you periodically listen to, watch, even if it's YouTube channels that talk about your career, your field in education. And I'd like you to list those. It can be 10 podcasts, it could be 10 magazines, it could be 10 people, it could be 5 people and 5 podcasts. I don't care what the balance is. I just want you to list. And as you do each one, just a short 1 to 2 sentence description as to what it is. I don't know why the is there, but I can tell you I did one for myself, just to kind of give you an idea. Like if I was going to do one, I listen to a podcast called The Rest is History every week without fail. Usually if I'm hiking or something like that, I always catch it. They usually do 2 episodes a week. I listen to it. And the podcast provides me like ideas for planning. It's a range of topics from different points of view. And also a lot of times they'll pose questions that I think are good inquiry questions for social studies. Mine would probably be mostly at this point YouTube and podcasts. Again, I listen to another one called The Rest is Politics, which it's kind of it's a sister podcast to that. But again, it talks about political topics. I feel like it keeps me current. I listen to something called The Seven from the Washington Post. That's the 7 news stories for the day. It's literally a 7-minute podcast. That's what I want you to do. But it doesn't have to just be about content. I also watch something called it's called Pocket Full of Primary. I'm not a primary trained teacher. I'm not trained in primary education, K to 5, but she has a lot of cool technology and delivery methods in the classroom, and I like that for my 380 or ed tech class. So sometimes I'll share those with them. So I would already right off the bat, there's 4. But just something like that. You can search. If you don't think you have 10, feel free. They can be Twitter accounts. They can be Instagram accounts. They can be Facebook accounts. I'll update that actually when I say social media. I do mean like Instagram. Oh, they can be TikTok. I know a lot of people use TikTok videos. So just list them and just kind of how they benefit you, you feel. That's your discussion board. That's the only thing that is officially due this week is discussion 4. Also, that'll allow me to get a little caught up on anything that I'm behind on grading. I just talked about being grading and keeping current, so I want to make sure I do that. But I do want to talk about the other 2 assignments. I'm going to talk about the research paper first. I'll probably hit this a couple of times, and some people have already emailed me questions about this because they've been picking topics. But basically, just to reiterate, you do by April 22nd, you need to have a 7 to 8 page research paper completed, double spaced, 12-inch font, APA format, with 5 sources. So you do need a separate bibliography page. In case you're asking, no, the bibliography page and the title page do not count. I want 7 pages of content. And yes, it can be like 6.5. That's 7. That half page would be the 7. But I want you to think about a topic in curriculum or pedagogy that you can kind of just expand upon. I'm trying to keep it broad because this is a curriculum class, and I feel like most things in the classroom at some point revert back to that curriculum. But I want you to think about something in terms of your delivery or teaching methods that you can write upon. I would like a clear thesis, and you can do that, but I did put some topics up. Let me see if I'm sorry, it didn't pop up there as quick as I wanted it to. There it went. Sorry, I'm operating on my home computer, which is kind of messy a little bit, but that's okay. Let's do it. There we go. And I know some people have asked me about this. This was a list. I think I talked about this in the initial video, but here's some that are curriculum focused. and some that are teaching focused and all. But again, you're not bound to this. This was just me kind of spitballing, so to speak, some ideas that I could share with you. So that's the research paper, again, due on the 22nd. The next thing that is due, and it is a little closer, is the controversy project or the curriculum controversy project. And I'm going to read a little bit verbatim. I was typing this up a little bit today. Um, there are many things that can affect the climate of a school, classroom, community, especially, I should add the word curriculum in there. For this assignment, you're going to select a political issue, a cultural or historical event that influence the educational climate slash curriculum on a large scale. Yes, you can use recent events. I think it's important to examine. Um, I'm not trying to get uber political here, but obviously there's some stuff going on with the Department of Education. I think it's definitely would fall into this, the curriculum controversy project, because there's so much grants and special education funding that is associated with that and other programs. If you want to look at that, feel free. I'm not, if we have repeat topics, that's fine. We're an online class, so we're not actually presenting in a classroom. So I'm fine if there's multiple people who want to look at the same things. I have looked at, I'm going to try to get you a few more. But what you have to do for this assignment, I want you to create a 10 to 15 slide PowerPoint in which you present, this information on it. I'll show you, I do have an outline for you. But here's some that I have that I kind of put on there. But, the California math wars. If you're big into West Virginia history, there was the Kanawha County textbook controversy. I think it was from 1974. I put the Department of Ed, the Little Rock Nine, and social integration. I need to put it on here. The 1619 project that recently was a big deal, especially during the COVID era, I guess, so to speak. That was a big one. I also wanted to include, because again, I know we have some instructors in community colleges and other colleges. If you want to do anything related to higher education policies for like restructuring, or maybe one that's a big one on the Shepherd campus right now is the liberal arts and core curriculum and how we integrate those into the classes. Those are all good. As long as it's a curriculum style topic that, connects to the climate around the community, hot or cold, that's all we're looking for. Now, when you do this, again, 10 to 15 slides, I have it put on here if it'll help, but the title slide is a slide for this. And you can kind of just have the title and such. You need to have an intro slide. You need to have I would like a question, like what is the question? It doesn't have to be anything fancy, but how the 1974 textbook controversy in West Virginia influenced the state's math instruction or something like that. You want to make sure you define it, just give a brief overview and the objective of the presentation. Then you're going to give the topic background. This is going to be, as it says, the first one is 1 to 2 slides. This can be multiple slides. It could be teaching. I have vouchers. That's a good one. Standardized testing. These are all good, great topics. But you just need to make sure you have the pros and the con arguments. You got to look at the opposing side. Have that on there. You need to have the stakeholders who are involved and trends. I put visuals. You do not have to have a chart or anything like that. But if you find one that you think is really good, include it. That is fine. Any visuals, any images. I have graphs, charts, images. Glad I put that on there. So if you think there's a specific picture, yes, put it on there and just make sure you caption it. That can be a slide. Then you need to kind of have a conclusion of the current climate of this in terms of the curriculum. I'm kind of stuck on that climate word since we've been talking about this week. And, and who's really involved and who this influences. And then your final slide should be a bibliography. I put 5 sources. I think you need to look up about 5 sources being a graduate class and have them listed on one of the final slide in APA format. That is, again, due on the 13th. It is not due this week, which would be the 6th. So you have a little bit of time, but I wanted to go ahead and get it out there for you. So with all that being said, I promise I should be caught up. By the time you listen to this, I will have the Padlets posted, or if I don't, they will be up very, very early in the week. and then I'll jump on the wakelets and get the discussions all done. So with that being said, I'm going to stop my share. I'm sure I talked longer than I said I would, and I will talk to everyone next week. Thank you very much. Bye.